Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today and welcome to the DAS RCN Community Forum on the Global DAS Month and PubDAS. I'm Casey Adderhold from the Incorporated Research Institutions for Seismology. IRIS is committed to fostering the exchange of scientific ideas by providing a safe and productive and welcoming environment. All participants are expected to abide by the IRIS Meeting Code of Conduct. This forum will be recorded and archived on the IRIS Earthquake Science Presentations webinar YouTube channel as well. We'll start with some announcements, then followed by some, oops, just realized that was a private message here. Let me get that to everybody. There we go. So we will start with some announcements, have some short presentations, and then time at the end for Q&A, discussion, and additional announcements. Should you have a comment or question during those Q&A and discussion times, you can type into the chat to be read aloud, or you can raise your hand and we can go in order and have folks be unmuted. If the meeting happens to crash due to Zoom or internet issues, we will reboot it. Just click the link again. We've got automatic captions available to be turned on and off on your Zoom control panel. And I'll go ahead then and get started with a few of our announcements. We do have a DAS RCN steering committee call next week on Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. We also have a few activities happening at the AGU fall meeting. There's a half-day workshop on day 0 that will cover DAS data management. If you would like to join that, please sign up as soon as you can so that we've got enough food, because there is a free lunch offered there. Then followed by that on Monday, I believe Monday, right, Herb? There's two sessions, novel methods of vibration sensing on subsea fiber optic cable and observing wave field gradients in seismology, applications, instrumentation, and theory. So those will both be happening at AGU this year in Chicago. And then would you like to do your announcement for the IUGG abstracts, Herb?
Sure. So I just want to be sure that you check your DAS interest group mailing list, because I just sent out an announcement that the IUGG in 2023 in Berlin, 11 to 15 July, will have a DAS symposium that's looking at using DAS in earthquake and explosion monitoring. So the abstracts are due February 14th, and authors will be notified of acceptance March 14th.
Thanks, Herb. All right, and I added a link to the DAS RCN website that'll have all those dates and events that I had mentioned, along with the links to register or submit an abstract, and I'll add the IUGG event on there too. I think now we'll just go ahead and move into our short presentations. And again, there will be time at the end for other community announcements, so keep that in mind as we go forward. So for now, I'll hand this over to Andreas Wuestefeld, who will walk us through an update on the Global DAS Month, set to be held next February.
Yep, thanks, Cassie. I'll just share my screen in a second. So thanks, first of all, to everybody who showed interest in the Global DAS Month. I think the feedback was overwhelming to me, so that is great, and it shows the interest in the community to have something like that. Yes, the Global DAS Month will be held in February 23, and I have a couple of announcements to make, or updates rather. Yes, I guess I share my screen now. Well, yes. I've put now up general information on a web page at NORSAR, and I put the link in the chat actually right now. So everybody can check that. And I will also write an update to the dust email list after this meeting, so that everybody, also those who can't attend, are updated. So the idea is, again, to have dust systems recording teleseismic earthquakes larger than magnitude 1 during February 2023, so that seismologists can work with that, and we can work on many different things using a somewhat homogeneous data set, at least during a homogeneous period. Homogeneous data set is the keyword here now. I guess that's the biggest announcement now. I had some very good feedback and intense sometimes discussion about the data format, and good arguments for a homogeneous data format of the available dust data, and also good arguments for a heterogeneous data set. And I guess the argument that won at the end over is the ease for both the groups to use the native data formats from the interrogator. So that is now the suggested data format. Everybody just uploads data. So I have written down here the details again. So in February 23, format is downsampled native interrogator format. So downsampled to 100 Hertz and about 20 meter sampling rate, and 1 hour per event. So no continuous data, but triggered files, so to speak. It is also required that there is a README text with description of the data, cable and contact information and so forth, KML file with the lab longs and elevations of each channel, or if data or cable coordinates are sensitive, then a CSV file with relative locations in meters from an arbitrary point, probably from the interrogator. So that should make it anonymous enough, and still data can be shared. There has been made arguments in the last meetings for anonymous or not geolocated data. So I think this can still be useful for the community. So then there's a meta.json file form as described in the RCN working group on the metadata. There's a link here to that. This is still under development. So keep an eye on that webpage and on that format. Most importantly, everybody who uploads data should also upload a example reader for the data, so that format can actually be read by everybody. Can be in any language of your preference, Python, MATLAB, C, Julia, even Fortran, whatever you have, just so that there is a possibility to read the data. Earthquakes that are required are, as I said, magnitude 5 or larger. I have here an example. This is an earthquake map from USGS on February 2022, actually. So we had about 140 events. Voila, that's these are the events. And if we get about 150 events already, or again next year, that will be very, very nice. A good catalog. You can access that here through the USGS website. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. It also offers an output in KLM or GeoJSON. So look for that, so this is the reference data. These are the events that we are looking for. If we are missing one event, or if you are missing one event, that's fine. Upload what data of that is available. I put also here a link already on that web page directly for 2023 for that period. If I click on that now, where is it? Here, it will show an empty string, an empty JSON string, because there are no earthquake for 2023 yet available. But this will then populate with a nice JSON string that hopefully can be helpful in automating your processes in cutting the relevant data out. Yes, and then the data will be uploaded to PubDAS, which is a repository for DAS data hosted by the University of Michigan. A paper on that is also linked here, and ̶ack will actually present on that in a short while. Also a suggested kind of organization, how you organize your data in a year, month, day form, so just so that there is some sort of structure in the data. Yes, and maybe just, yeah, that's, I guess, oh, yes, so I got already quite a good few responses here in the questionnaire that helped a lot in the decision-making process, actually. It's only for my information so far. We have very good response from Europe, a few from other places, wherever they may be. Yes, a good contribution already. There are 8 already certain, so that's quite good. 4 are still looking into it, and I know of quite a few that are also continuing to trying to get permissions or finding a good cable. So that's pretty good. You have a good range of cable length between 800 meters and 45 kilometers, I think, at the moment. So that's also quite good. Quite a few are already certain that the coordinates can be published, so that's also good, and a few need still confirmation. A tendency for shallow buried, I guess that's not a big surprise. Yeah, mostly academic. We also have about half of the contributors would be in a position to share also continuous data. So there is then also access for more data. So people could then afterwards ask for longer time periods if that is required. And yes, so we have the mix of responses on how information would be distributed, and I think it's just easiest if we grab it directly from USGS. They actually also offer an email alert directly, so you can also ask IRIS to send you an email out once there is magnitude 5 earthquake, and that can then be processed. There's a link as well here on the web page, so that should open. Yeah, so you can just sign up for an email alert there. So that's it from my side. I will summarize all of that in an email afterwards to the DAS mailing list.
Thanks so much, Andreas. Are there any questions from the audience before we get, when we will have a presentation now by ̶ack on PubDAS, but and there will be time for questions at the end as well. But if you have a question now, you can raise your hand or pop it in the chat.
Everything's clear. That's awesome.
Crystal clear.
I have a question, Andreas. So based on that, Kathleen Hodgkinson from Sandia. So based on the input that you've received so far in terms of cable length and the number of cables involved, do you have a ballpark estimate of what the data volume involved will be for that?
Kind of, I estimated 10 participants with 10 kilometers of cable each, 150 events, that will be 5 terabytes about.
Okay, 5 terabytes. Okay.
So I am expecting something between 3 and 30 terabytes for the whole data set.
Okay, okay, thanks.
It looks like we've got a question from Eileen. Eileen, do you want to?
Yeah, Andreas, if there are sort of shorter time recordings, like let's say students doing a DAS deployment for a class or something like that, that only overlap part of the month of recording, do you feel like that still has value within the overall database, or will it just make it sort of messier to manage all of the events? What's your feeling?
My gut feeling is every data set is welcome. I mean, also in real data or in the global network, you have also outages of seismometers. So I think, yeah, well, if it's only on for a day, then that's, or if only one event is in there, then it's probably not useful. But if you have more than 10 events overlapping, I think that's good.
Cool, thanks.
All right.
Okay.
And there'll be more time for questions, but I think, yeah, we'll go ahead and hand this over now to Ẓack.
So yeah, we'll go through PubDAS very quickly. So here there is a link that actually Andreas already provided to the preprint of the paper. And so in this paper, you will find quite a lot of information about how to access PubDAS, the goal of the repository, and also all the experiments that are there. So just to go quickly over what we have here. So the idea is that, as we all know, there is a big data storage issue with DAS data. So the idea of PubDAS was to offer to the community, to whoever wants to play with DAS data, several data sets. So we can like broaden the community, and everyone can start playing and developing their own codes and sharing their finding. And so we share now 8 data sets. We don't share them at full. Some are shared as full, other are either downsampled, or sometimes we just share like a week. And so on the B panel here, this is what we share right now. So we are close to 100 terabytes of data. And on the right panel on C, we show actually the full extent of the data set is if we had to share it at full. And so we reach up to more than 800 terabytes. And the dash curve that you see here is actually the amount of data that is right now shared on Iris. So it's just to show like the magnitude of the DAS data sets versus what Iris hosts for now several decades. So here is just a table like summarizing important parameters of all these data sets. We have tried to share the data in their original form when it was possible, in their original formats, because again, the idea is that everyone can get their hands dirty and start playing with the data from scratch and developing their own code and share with the community. But now, how to get access to PubDAS? So PubDAS is hosted at the Advanced Research Computing Center at University of Michigan. So there is a link here. If you click, I will send this presentation later on. If you click on this link, you will arrive directly on Globus. So Globus is software as a service that deliver fast, reliable data transfer between different platforms. So you can use Globus on your laptop and connect it to storage, a supercomputer, directly to your DAS instrument if you want, or other personal laptop. And when you use Globus, the data go from point A to point B, and it's not like a host in a cloud. So you will directly access like one endpoint at University of Michigan and download it directly on your laptop, for example. And here I put this graph of the famous like learning curve that we talk about a lot. With Globus, maybe one thing to recognize is that it's not super, the first little step might be a little bit tricky. It might not be super smooth, so it's more like a learning step than a learning curve. So you will probably have to read, let's say, like 2 PDF pages and learn about how to use Globus. You will have to create an ID, a user ID, and things like that. So just please dedicate at least 15 to 30 minutes of your time to learn how to use Globus before just jumping on it. 3 main points, though, that if you know that, that will be much smoother. You need to know what's an endpoint, a collection, and Globus Connect. So an endpoint, basically, it's where the data is stored. And on the endpoint, sorry, you can have like different collections. So collection of data, so it's like a series of folder. And to access Globus, you will need an API, which is called Globus Connect. So first you will have like to create an ID, a user ID, then download Globus Connect. And Globus Connect exists for server, and so you have like a Linux version for server, and it also exists for laptop. And in that case, you have like a Windows, Apple, or Linux version of Globus Connect Personal. So if you want to install Globus Connect on the server, you will probably have to work with the help of the ITs, and so they can install that for you. But if you work directly on your personal laptop, you can download for free Globus Connect Personal. So now, so here are like the 3 main steps: create a Globus ID, Globus Connect Personal. But now let me show you how to access it. I will probably have to unshare. So I just go in my browser. So I click on the link of PubDAS. And so I already have an Globus ID. So I connect, I log in. And this is the file manager that you will reach for PubDAS. Okay, so this is this address. If you copy paste this address and you are already logged in, you will arrive here. If you are not logged in, you will arrive like to the welcome page of Globus. And here you have like all the data sets. So now you can, I want to download Fairbanks. So on the left side, I have what I want to download. And on the right side, I can say, where do I want to download it? I want to download it on my office computer. Okay, you see it's red. And why is it red? It's because my Globus Connect Personal is not running. So I just open it right now. I refresh this one more time. And now it's green, it's connected. Okay, and now here I can access like my desktop, right? On the other side, I was on PubDAS. I go into Fairbanks. I want to download the citation.txt and put it on my desktop. And now I can just do transfer or sync. Transfer or sync, start. And that's it. Now it will automatically transfer and sync to my desktop. It's actually here. So one thing to recognize with Globus is that if there is any problem, like you lose connection or you are not there for whatever reason, there is an issue with the download, well, Globus will try to optimize the download and retry to download the file for up to 7 days. So see, if you have like no internet connection for 7 days, then it will give up. But if you lose connection for 1 day, it will constantly, every minute, try again and try again and try again. So you don't have to care about everything. Just click on download and that's it. And also it will optimize data transfer. So if you are using your computer, let's say watching, using a lot of internet band, then it will optimize the download so you can still work on your computer, but at night it will like boost the downloads. And one last thing I'd like to add, very last thing. So the people who are going to upload the data, what we will do, we will not give you access directly to the PubDAS folder, but we will give you access to PubDAS upload. And in this one, so we have global month. And in this one, I can, with your email address, I can give you read and write access. And so you will be allowed to upload whatever you want there. And the idea is that I don't want to give you access to the official PubDAS because if you have like, it's very easy to make a mistake and we don't want that. So once you upload here in PubDAS upload, Andreas and I will take care just to move it to the PubDAS official folder. And so I will need, maybe Andreas can collect that, but let's say 1 people for each institution who will be in charge to upload the data should provide their email address. And so I can have them, give them like a read and write privilege to the PubDAS upload folder. So that was a lot of information. So if
it is actually quite nice, the Globus. It has a bit of, my experience is that it's a bit clunky in the beginning. It's a steep learning curve, but it has a lot of advantages, especially since it tries over and over again, like FTP or something that always breaks down anyway. So this is a very good solution. I also would like to add that,
yeah, go ahead.
I also would like to add that you can upload either the full data set at the end of the month. So on on March 1st, you can upload everything, or you can upload the data as they come. If you have an automated script available or something, then you can upload that already on the fly, if that is possible in your system. We will close upload on March 31st, just so that we have kind of a deadline, and we can then start writing paper and looking into what we actually have. So that yeah, March 31st is the closing deadline.
So, and one thing I'd like to add, so there are a lot of documentation about Globus and there are a lot of possibilities. What I just explained was like the most basic features. There are like API for, you can also use command lines. There is like command lines in Python. You can automate transfer. Let's say every time there is an earthquake, I want to upload it automatically. It's possible, or download only at night if this is what you want to do. So there are, it's actually the field of possibilities is quite large. But if you don't want to bother about that and just do like a press button once you have like all the data ready, you just press the button and then Globus take charge of everything, even like checking the integrity of the files. And if a file is corrupted, it will try again and download it again until it's like in good shape.
Are there any other questions for ̲ack?
There was a question in the chat by Pascal. And the question was, where was it again? About the data format.
Yeah, so Pascal at May said, why native interrogator data format, please, given that they are downsampled anyway?
So they are not all downsampled. Actually, there are only 2 data sets over the 8 that are downsampled. All the rest are like in their original form. So the idea is to have the people to learn about the original data. And there is no consensus today on which data format is the best. So we didn't want to take a strong decision on that. And the one that have been downsampled, we use the original format as well. So we just change a few headers for sampling rates and timestamp and things like that. But the idea is to use exactly the direct output of the interrogator.
I thought I meant about the data we would collect in February, not those data which are already in Globus.
There are 2 reasons that speak for the native data formats. One is just practicality, that there are, as expected, lots of opinion how such a common data format should look like. And there's a dedicated working group in the RCN that takes care of that. And they will be during 2023, that's my understanding, that data format will be published. The other reason is also actually to have a heterogeneous data set for just seeing what other interrogators actually look like, what data sets are available, so that everybody can write in their own software toolbox, have a set of readers and writers available. So I think that's also a nice effort, actually, to share then these data format readers amongst the community and have example data sets available. This is not an ideal solution. There are also good reasons for a homogeneous data set. But just because of the sometimes opinionated discussions on a common data format, I think it's, and given the time constraints now, I think it's just the best, use whatever is available right now. My vision is actually that this whole Global DAS Month will help to identify such issues and find out what works, what doesn't work, and then to repeat that Global DAS Month in 2024 with then a much better setup and with all the teething problems sorted out. So that is my vision for this whole exercise. I think this the status already now is that it helped already quite a lot to bring the community together and make people aware of things, and just these kind of discussions are very helpful. And then having a heterogeneous data set will hopefully help to foster that more towards a common data format that everybody can agree upon.
So I think we've got a quick clarification question here that might address also some earlier points from Eileen Martin in the chat. When you say native format, original format, you're just saying the output format that each experimental team selects, not the native formats that optics engineers at the interrogator companies would work with, correct?
Yes, strain rate or strain data, I think, not the optics, not the optical output or phase, whatever. Yeah.
And so then manufacturers should be fine with this, as Pascal asked, with what's being shared.
Sharing all the header information. I would strongly discourage to use ̶ack Y. Just as a comment.
There are 2 questions, Sergey and Jinping.
Thank you. I'm Sergey Nikitin from T8 company, which is original equipment manufacturer. If we share original data format, I don't think it's going to help anyone because it's not even close to strain rate. So what we can do, we can convert it to strain rate and then share. And I think in that case, it will be more appropriate. We could change filter frequency from 100 Hertz to a higher frequency that we can, but I don't think the original data format will be helpful just because it's not even close to strain rate, to be honest with you. It's just bytes of phase shifts, which I don't think is going to be useful. So would that be okay if we work out a sort of intermediate format, which is closer to original data format, which is not filtered, for example, down to 100 Hertz, which is requested, but it's still pre-processed somehow to be more, let's say, more understandable, let's say that way, to seismologists. I'm apologizing.
Thanks, Sergey. That's a good point. I think I need to rephrase then the statement of native format. Sorry for that. I think we need a format and a reader that can convert data to strain or strain rate. Whatever data you format or you store it in, be it in radians or I don't know, whatever optical engineers come up with. But there should be the reader should convert it to strain rate or strain or velocity or whatever, but indicate physical output units so that seismologists can work with that.
Okay, got it. Thank you very much.
All right, we have a question from Yingping.
Yeah, this is Yingping Li. I just have a thought on that. So Andrew, you mentioned about probably 6 of them would like to provide the continuous recordings. But I think since there's a global experiment, so if participation can supply 1 day continue recordings, so we also have opportunities to get the global seismic noise, background noise information into this experiment. Because that's just only, because I know the continuous recording will be a large data set, but if it, on each side, they can provide one day, 24 hours continuous recording, so we can make the comparison of the background noise globally. So I think that could be additional for this experiment. So we have some other output, not only signals, we also get noise. So basically we know each of the network, what a single noise ratio will be for this experiment.
Yeah, thanks, Yingping. That was already suggested some time otherwise. I think, yes, there is value in that. And I am flexible enough. I guess we can just declare Tuesday, February 14th, 0 UTC to 23:59:59 as the global DAS day. A Tuesday is, I guess, good when everybody is back from weekend and can prepare for it if needed. And I hope that will not make PubDAS explode if we have 24 hours. So sure, if there's interest, yes. But it will also be downsampled to 100 Hertz. I think otherwise it will explode, PubDAS.
We don't need that so high frequency things. So but I think but this opportunity, if we got some background noise, spectral, that kind of study, can be used this kind of data set. So that could be plus to this this whole experiment.
I think, or I hope everybody is flexible enough if we declare February 14th tentatively as the day, and then just see during the first 2 weeks how much data is actually available, how many participants. And then in February, we somewhat spontaneously declare that February 14th is the day where everybody should upload or can upload continuous data.
So do we have this participation locations, globally locations available on the map so people can know where is the potential station position compared to the seismicity, global seismicity?
Yeah, I think, Andreas, you had a map showing where people would be submitting data from, right, as part of your website, or was that part of what you're only able to see right now?
I do have, yeah, I don't have that available right now, I think.
Which is no problem. I think maybe as
Yeah.
we get closer to that, that would be a good thing to.
I will continuously then during February update the map, and the website also provides statistics and so forth on the website at the NORSAR. So yeah, also with a map and everything. So that should be hopefully be fine.
Okay, so this is great. I think we'll just then move into our last presentation then from Rob Mellors, and then we can continue to address questions after that.
Hey, thanks, Casey. Let's see. Okay, hopefully everybody can see that. Can we get a confirmation there?
All good.
Okay, so this is kind of an update of where we are on the DAS data management. And we've kind of got a core group here. Sorry, we haven't been as good as we should be on getting everybody there, but Voon has really been leading the charge, Kathleen, and then we brought on Rob Port at Sandia as well, and also the working group and some others that. So I appreciate all the work there on that. So I'm not quite sure how much the audience is aware of this, but the question is, we need a common DAS metadata, as has kind of been pointed out in the previous talks. There's lots of DAS data available. Often it comes in various interrogator formats or slightly modified ones, such as SegY. And the key thing, so we've got quite a bit of data. They're in different formats, and it really doesn't fit into a seismic data format very well. DAS measures strain over a distance, as opposed to, say, a seismic sensor measures velocity over a point. And for various reasons, it just, if you try to shoehorn it into existing formats, it just doesn't work very well. And you may be losing information that you need for analysis. And I think Andreas made something about SegY not really working. And then there's other ones, there's various HDF formats that seem to vary by manufacturer, and they have more of the information, but they're not standard. And then the other aspect is that we'd like to apply international standards of metadata, the FAIR, which accessible, interoperable, reusable, and I forget what EF stands for, but it's on the next slide. So our goal is really to try to come up with an idea, and it's really almost more of a, I guess I consider it more of a straw man than anything else. You know, when there's a limited amount of time we have on this, none of us are data scientists, so we're just kind of taking the first steps from a kind of scientific researcher perspective of what we need, and the F is for findable. And we're really starting out with what's the content, what is the data, what's the information needed in it. And I think it's somewhat evolved that we're really looking at an exchange format rather than an archival format. And they may be similar, but not necessarily exactly the same. So from a seismic perspective, this is more like a seed rather than something you might have in an Oracle database. And so we're thinking about something that you might put in XML or say JSON, as opposed to whatever you would have in your SQL database or however you do it. And of course, the other thing is the data volumes are very large, more comparable to 3D seismic than standard earthquake type seismology. So we think it's needed. Hopefully others could concur. And these are just some of this is kind of a restatement of the FAIR principles. It should cover most for data collections. It should be an open, non-proprietary. It should be, well, not necessarily human readable, but that would be a good attribute, interpretable with most computers, reusable, and ideally it should be adopted by new processing. And note that we haven't really gone into the data format here. Andreas was saying that it's not really defined. Well, we're just trying to do it one step at a time now. We're looking at a metadata scheme that can be implemented. And one principle I think we've agreed on is that we separate the metadata from the data. Partly because the metadata is a smaller volume, then you can do things like search on it. And it also allows us to sidestep the data a little bit. And so we haven't really decided on what the format for the data is. It's not completely clear to me that we will have an answer. It may be flexible. I think the one constraint is that the data files, we might not have a link to it. I mean, for example, in CSS format, you actually have a specific link to the data file from the metadata. That's probably, I've been convinced that's a bad idea. But what you do need is the data file should have enough information that it's uniquely definable within the metadata. And so there's these kind of things, constraints. And then we're also looking at things like location files. If you get, say, CSV file location, that might be something pointed to. So we had a number of discussions on this, and as a way to kind of control this, we've switched over to GitHub. And this is kind of following some standard guides that's illustrated there. And we're really focusing on that as one source of truth. Some of you may be aware that we had a white paper out that's floating around. We're deprecating that, and we're going to go to the GitHub as the primary, just to try to keep that. And so far, the GitHub seems to be working fairly well. We've got a few people, key contributors coming in, putting in suggestions. Our major constraint now is just lack of time. Voon, for example, is doing most of the work trying to do that. And, you're getting all sorts of suggestions coming in, some of them not always compatible with each other, how we handle it. But it is a good way of keeping version control and in a kind of a organized fashion. So that part is working. That's up and working. The possible metadata structure, we've had a couple of discussions. If you were familiar with the white paper, you would see what we had on the right, which sort of implies a parent-child structure in some respects. An alternate possibility would be what we have on the left, where you kind of split it up, and then it sort of gets into a relational database. But at least we're not really at the stage where you can defining a full relational database is kind of a big job. It's not trivial. So I think this is somewhat of a conceptual model, and we'll work on this and see how it works. This is kind of dividing it up as you might imagine it. There might be ways to flatten this, for example, by start and end times and things like that, but I think that's for future discussion. But the basic idea is that we break the metadata up. There's kind of an overview thing that would discuss the experiment. Then you would have a block of information about the interrogator. It's say a Selixa, whatever, or an OptaSense ODH1. And the parameters there, what's the output, strain rate, or even maybe, I think there's one out, an Australian one that produces velocity. And then you have the acquisition parameters, what's your pulse repetition interval, and that has to take what's your pulse length and things like that, and then gauge length, or maybe even if it's one of the interrogators where gauge length is sort of undefined under raw output, and then finally the channel, which in some sense corresponds to a seismic station. And then in parallel, we have the information about the cables. You might have multiple cables. For example, I mean, I guess most cases you'd have one cable, but we'd like the flexibility to have multiple ones. And then each cable would almost certainly have several fibers inside. The fibers might be different. You might have a helical, you might have a linear, you might have an engineered fiber, you might have a loosely buffered one, tightly buffered, and so on. And so that information would be kept in parallel, and that would be linked to the location as well. So that's kind of how we're thinking about it. Each component of the data collection system would have its own set of data of metadata that would be linked in some way by basically keys. And so this is just kind of a quick view of where we are on the GitHub. There's the link to it at the bottom. Voon has done a great job of pulling all this together and is now we're trying to keep up with all the inputs and things like that. But that's in progress. And we are also on the way of creating some simple reader scripts that will read formats and convert it into that. And for example, it's a Python script that have classes corresponding to each metadata block. And as you do that, as you create the code to read it, then you start realizing things about the metadata that you have to change. So it's kind of iterative. But again, I expect all this to change considerably. We'll do what we can. I think the global seismic data set that's collected may be, as Andrea said, a good test bed for testing all this. I mean, ideally, by the time in February that's all set up, we'll have sufficient reader scripts, and we could generate, for example, a metadata archive that would cover all of that data set. And then people could try doing that. You might even be able to do searches on that and identify things. And then we can start working on data formats and see what thoughts are on data formats and so on. It's just kind of specifying a data format now just seems putting the cart ahead of the horse a little bit. And then in parallel, we are also seeking to write it up. We're starting with the white paper, and we're hoping to produce SRL, maybe a data mining paper, and hopefully have that out by, say, January, or at least published, and make that available just as kind of a snapshot of where we are. So the other key thing is we need a name. And so we are soliciting suggestions. The winner will give a prize. I don't know what that prize is, but whatever. Here are some of the ideas. So I think this is probably, from a marketing point of view, the key thing. And so to summarize, it's a first effort. We're using GitHub to organize things. We're developing templates and Python scripts for generating it. The DAS campaign that has actually been overtaken by events, this part right here, but our suggestion is that by the time the data is collected, we may have enough scripts and whatever to generate a whole set of associated metadata in some kind of consistent format. That's actually my goal. That's what I'd like to be able to do. And then we'll do that, and then we'll find out everything that's wrong with it and probably have to start from scratch all over again. But that's kind of the way it works. But suggestions are appreciated. And so thank you.
Thanks so much, Rob. And yeah, I know it's been a lot of work from a lot of people there. And
yeah, it's coming together.
A lot of work from a few key people, but
yeah, I think it's coming together. I really like the GitHub and that, but it's GitHub and Globus. I kind of long for the old days where we just had email and Kermit, but oh well. Luckily, we have a bunch of early career scientists who know what they're doing. So, Kathleen, do you have any comments to add on that? I think you're on. I'm not sure who else is. I'm not sure. She was on.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I'd just like to sort of echo something that Rob mentioned, and that is, this global DAS experiment that Andreas is organizing. It's also, a data management exercise as well, in addition to the geophysics that will come out of it. And so it's a really great opportunity to try to use this global DAS data set to try and converge on metadata standards and a data container.
And I think it would be good to start getting in some real data scientists as well. I spoke with somebody at Scripps this week who has a lot of data experience with databases, and he had all sorts of suggestions and say, no, you got to do it this way and that. And so we, at some point, we need to start folding in that expertise. So.
Rob, I really want to thank you and your working group. One question is, as the RCN is slated to conclude in June of next year, what your working group is thinking of in terms of continuing the effort for continuity. I really like your effort, and I hate to see, you know, it go away.
I guess I was sort of planning to continue. I mean, it's kind of pro bono now, although maybe not everybody can do that. Maybe we'll put a GoFundMe link on the GitHub. But if there are places we could get some basic funding, for Voon, for example, is a postdoc. And so I'm really hesitant about asking her to do too much. Me, but yeah, if there are efforts that might be possible to get support for this, I'd be all for it. I think the other key is we really need to talk to some of the industry partners, not necessarily for support, but for their input. I know Anna Stork sent me an email. There's also CFOM, which seems to me might be a useful link as well. And I'm a little bit leery of a bunch of academics coming up with some standard, and we need some heavyweights behind it, or just see where we go. But I know the original seed format took, there may be people on who were involved in this, took a long time to come up. So we do what we can and see what happens, and maybe some bright postdoc is going to sit down and write out the whole schema in a weekend. I don't know. That's the best case scenario. But yeah, basically, Herb, I plan to continue it as I can. Okay. So.
Well, a lot of community efforts just work that way. And I think you've got enough momentum that maybe it will be sustained simply on that basis.
Yeah, I guess we're relying on the IRIS website, RCN, right, Casey? I think that's where it's hosted. Is that going to still exist, or?
Yes, I think as we transition to Earthscope, there may be some things that move around at the end of the year here, because we will be Earthscope by the end of the year.
Right.
But I think that we'll figure out how that transition affects things.
Yeah, so that's the key part. Yeah.
So I think we need to be mindful that our time is just about up. I want to thank all the presenters, Andreas, Ẓack, and Rob, and the groups that work with them. Thank you all for attending. I think we have a very good show of interest today. So Casey, you want to do the closeout?
Yes, yeah, thank you again to everyone. We really appreciate your time. The recording will be made available on the IRIS Earthquake Science Presentations playlist. And yeah, definitely check out the RCN website for more information on those upcoming events. And yeah, stay tuned.